I have never forgotten that afternoon, the one that changed my life forever. It was October. The late sunlight poured down over Silverwood Lake, shimmering like shards of broken glass. The wind was warm, yet I felt cold inside. I was standing on the porch, a cup of chamomile tea still steaming in my hand. That was my daily ritual. Tea at sunset, gazing at the lake, thinking of Daniel, my only son whom I buried 6 months ago. This house used to echo with laughter. Now, the only sound was the steady ticking of my mother's old clock on the wall. It was 5:15 p.m. I remember because I had just glanced at that very clock. Everything was unnaturally quiet until I heard an engine roar in the distance. A silver car appeared at the end of the dirt road leading to the lake. It was Monica, Daniel's widow. I squinted. She was driving faster than usual, dust swirling around her tires. The brakes screeched so hard the wheels skidded across the dirt before stopping right at the lake's edge. My heart began to pound as I set down the teacup. Monica stepped out. She was wearing the gray dress Daniel had given her on their anniversary. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red and swollen, like someone who had been crying or fighting. I wanted to call out, but my throat tightened. She opened the trunk and pulled out a brown leather suitcase, an old, heavy one I recognized immediately. I was the one who'd given it to her on their wedding day. Back then, I'd said, "So you can carry your dreams wherever you go." Now, watching her drag it toward the water, that sentence sounded painfully foolish. She struggled to pull the suitcase. Her body swayed as though she might collapse. Each step left deep marks in the mud. I called softly, "Monica!" She didn't turn. Maybe she didn't hear me. Maybe she chose not to. Then suddenly, she swung her arms, once, twice. And on the third try, the heavy suitcase flew into the air and plunged into the lake. A resounding thud broke the stillness. Ripples spread wide across the surface, shattering the calm of the afternoon. Monica stood there for a few seconds, then turned and ran back to the car. The door slammed shut. The engine screamed, the tires spun in the sand, and then the car sped away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and an eerie silence. I stood frozen on the porch. After a moment, I heard something, faint, distant, coming from the lake. A soft bloop, bloop, as if something inside that suitcase was moving. "No," I whispered, my hands trembling. "Dear God, please don't let this be what I think it is." I started to run. My legs were weak, my knees ached, but I didn't feel it. I stumbled down the wooden steps, through the mud, my skirt splattered. The suitcase was still floating, bobbing with the waves. I hiked up my dress and waded into the freezing water. My hand reached the slick leather surface. The water came up to my waist. I pulled. It was heavy as stone. Pain shot through my wrist, but I didn't stop. Finally, I dragged it onto the shore. It was so heavy, I had to kneel beside it. That sound again, faint, muffled, like a strangled breath. I bent down, trembling, and unzipped the case. The zipper screeched slowly, an eerie sound in the otherwise silent air. When the lid flipped open, my heart stopped. Inside wasn't clothing, not objects, but a tiny, drenched, bluish, motionless being. I don't remember how I screamed. I only remember whispering one sentence. "Please don't let this be real." 6 months before that afternoon, the house by Silverwood Lake still had voices in it. Daniel's laughter, the sound of his footsteps on the porch, the creak of the wooden door closing at night. Now only the wind passed through the old window frames, and the floorboards groaned beneath my steps. After my son's burial, the house felt unbearably large. I still cooked 2 portions, still left the light on in Daniel's room every night, as if he might walk in at any moment. His chair still had the dent where he used to sit. His teacup was still on the shelf, but inside me was an emptiness no sound could fill. Daniel had always been gentle, quiet but thoughtful. He worked as a civil engineer, precise in everything he did. I still remember our last meeting. It was drizzling that day. He came by to fix the leaky porch roof. When he finished, he leaned against the doorway, smiling. "Don't worry, Mom," he said. "I'll come back for dinner next week." I smiled, never realizing that would be the last time. The accident happened just 2 days later. They said his car skidded on the wet road. He died instantly. Monica, his wife, walked away with only a few scratches. When the police told me, I thought it was a cruel joke. I rushed to the crash site and saw the twisted wreck by the roadside. The wind howled, carrying the smell of gasoline, rain, and loss. In the days that followed, Monica barely spoke. She sat silently through the funeral, pale and dry-eyed. I tried to comfort her, but there was always a cold distance between us. Something in her eyes unsettled me. As if she was carrying a secret she refused to let anyone see. After the funeral, she moved out to the suburbs. I called her a few times, but she rarely answered. Eventually, she vanished completely from my life. Sometimes I remembered what Daniel told me on his last birthday. "Mom, if anything ever happens, please believe that I'll never leave my child behind." I had laughed back then, thinking he was joking. But now, in the golden light of the lake that evening, as I watched Monica throw that suitcase into the water, his words echoed in my mind, loud and clear. Could Daniel have known something before he died? Had he left me a message I hadn't understood? I looked out at the lake through the window. The surface was calm, as if nothing had happened. But I knew, from that moment on, my life would never be the same. Some part of the truth lay within that suitcase, and I would have to face it. I don't know how long I sat by the lake. The only sound I could hear was the soft dripping of water from the suitcase, blending with the pounding of my heart. The baby lay motionless, droplets from its wet hair falling onto its tiny cheeks. The skin was pale, the lips a deep shade of purple. I reached out with trembling hands and touched it. Ice cold, no sound, no movement, instinct took over. I pulled the baby into my arms, pressing my hand against its chest, desperate to find even the faintest heartbeat. Nothing. My body shook uncontrollably. Tears spilt down my face before I even realized I was crying. "No, baby, please, stay with me," I whispered through broken breaths. I laid the baby on the grass and did what I'd seen people do on television. I pressed gently on its tiny chest, then breathed air into its small mouth. Each breath made water spurt from its nose. I did it again and again until my head spun. Then, in that endless silence, I heard it. A faint sound, almost nothing, like a sigh caught in the wind. The baby breathed, a weak, uneven gasp. But it was real. I scooped the child into my arms, holding it close against my chest. The tiny body was soaked and light as a feather, but I could feel life trembling weakly within it. Without hesitation, I ran. My bare feet struck the gravel, sharp pain shooting up my legs, but I didn't feel it. I ran up the dirt path toward the house. The door flew open. My hands shook so hard I dropped the phone twice before dialing 911. "There's a baby!" I shouted. "A baby! Then someone threw it into the lake. It's still breathing, but barely." The calm voice of the dispatcher came through. "Ma'am, lay the baby on a flat surface. Wrap it in something dry and warm. Help is on the way." I placed the baby on the dining table and covered it with the thickest towel I could find. Its skin was like ice. Its eyes were still shut tight. I kept calling out to it, "Come on, sweetheart, stay with me, don't give up." Then I heard it. The siren, faint at first, then closer and closer. Red lights flashed through the windows as the door burst open. 2 paramedics rushed in, an older man and a young woman with her hair neatly tied back. They lifted the baby onto the stretcher, their movements quick and sure. I stepped aside, still clutching the damp towel in my hands. The nurse bent down, pressed a stethoscope to the baby's chest, and whispered, "There's still a heartbeat, but it's weak. We need to go now." I followed them out to the ambulance. The door slammed shut and the siren wailed, slicing through the night. Silverwood Lake faded behind us, the flashing lights reflecting off the water. A reminder that life, no matter how fragile, can still be pulled back from the edge if someone refuses to let go. The ambulance sped through the night, its siren echoing down the narrow road toward the city. I sat in the back, gripping the edge of the stretcher, my eyes fixed on the baby. The tiny body was wrapped in a thin blanket, breaths so faint I had to lean in close to hear them. The young nurse beside me kept her hand near the oxygen tank. She looked at me and said softly, "You did great, ma'am. Without you, that baby might not have made it." I nodded but couldn't speak. My throat was tight. All I could do was pray, over and over again. The ambulance pulled up at St. Mary's Hospital, lights blazing. When the doors opened, they wheeled the baby straight into the emergency room. I followed until a young, thin doctor stopped me at the door. "Please wait out here, ma'am. We'll do everything we can." I leaned against the wall, watching the door close. Time stretched unbearably. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept expecting to see a doctor walk out and shake his head, but instead I heard a voice. "Ma'am, are you the one who found the baby?" It was the young nurse from before. Her name tag read, Emily. She sat beside me, her tone gentle. "It's a boy, a little over a day old. We're keeping him warm and helping him breathe. His condition is critical, but there's still hope." I gripped her hand, tears welling up again. "Please, save him. Please." Emily nodded. She didn't say much, just squeezed my hand. A small gesture, but enough to make me believe there was still something to hold on to. About an hour later, a doctor came out. His face was tired, but his eyes were less grave than before. "He's stable for now," he said. "The next 48 hours are crucial. You can see him for a few minutes." I walked into the room. The baby lay inside an incubator, wrapped in thin gauze with a small tube in his nose. The white light reflected off his fragile skin, and my throat tightened. I pressed my hand to the cool glass and whispered, "Please live, little one. You've already survived the cold waters. Don't give up now." That night, I sat in the waiting room. The yellow lights cast long shadows across the floor. I couldn't sleep. Every time I heard footsteps in the hall, my head snapped up, heart heavy with dread. At dawn, the police arrived. A woman in a long coat introduced herself. "Mrs. Margaret Hill? I'm Detective Carla Ruiz. Can you tell me exactly what you saw?" I told her everything. Every detail. Monica, the car, the suitcase, the sound from the lake. Ruiz took careful notes, her expression unreadable. When I mentioned Monica's name, she paused for a moment. "Are you certain?" she asked. "I'm sure. I saw her." Ruiz exhaled softly. "That's strange. We have footage from a supermarket in the suburbs. Monica was there at the exact time you claim to have seen her at the lake." I froze. The air in the room suddenly felt colder. "You mean I was mistaken?" "I'm not saying that," Ruiz replied evenly, "but sometimes memory can deceive us, especially when we're grieving." Then she left. I sat in silence, her words echoing in my mind. Memory can deceive us, but my heart said otherwise. I knew what I saw, and deep down, I knew. This wasn't over. 3 days later, St. Mary's Hospital still smelled of the familiar disinfectant. I was rarely away from the second-floor corridor where the baby's special care room sat at the far end. Every morning, I brought a weak cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching people come and go. Everything around me went on as usual. Only I felt unsettled inside. The doctor said the baby's condition remained critical but had shown some improvement. He was able to breathe weakly on his own, and his skin had regained a little color. They gave him a temporary name, Baby Boy Hill, since I was the one who brought him in. Hearing that made my heart skip, not because of the name, but because of a familiar tug, as if an invisible thread connected me to this child. That afternoon, Detective Ruiz returned. She carried a thin file. "We ran DNA tests," she said, her voice steady and low. "We compared the baby's sample with archived records for Daniel Hill, your son." I looked up. My heart stopped. "And what were the results?" Ruiz studied me for a moment. Her gaze was less cold than when we first met. It was softer now. "The baby is the biological child of Daniel Hill and Monica Hill." I clutched the edge of the table. Those words made everything in my head explode. I thought I must have misheard. "You mean he's my grandson?" Ruiz nodded. "Yes, we checked twice to be sure." I sat motionless, tears falling without time to wipe them away. A mix of joy and pain clenched my chest. Daniel had a child, a part of him still alive. But at the same time, the image of Monica throwing the suitcase into the lake flashed in my mind as clearly as ever. "What about Monica?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "What does she say?" "She denies everything," Ruiz replied. "She says she wasn't at the lake that day and knows nothing about the baby. She claims she had a miscarriage a few weeks earlier. Are you sure you saw her?" I looked Ruiz straight in the eye. "I'm sure. I know how she walks, the way she threw the suitcase, even the color of the dress she was wearing. I could not be mistaken." Ruiz was silent for a few seconds, then closed the file. "In any case, thank you. We will continue the investigation." When she left, I remained seated, my mind full of questions. Why would Monica hide a pregnancy? Why would she throw her own child into the lake? And why had Daniel never told me he was going to be a father? I stood and walked down the corridor to the nursery. Inside the incubator, the baby lay still, breathing softly. I placed my hand on the glass. "You are Daniel's blood. The last piece of him. No matter what anyone says, I will protect you." For the first time in months, I felt I had a reason to keep living. That night, I could not sleep. The news that the baby was my grandson echoed in my head, mingled with suspicion about Daniel's death. The only son I had always believed had died in an accident. But something was wrong. Since Daniel's death, everything had felt too fast, too quiet. The police concluded that his car had skidded due to the rain, and Monica had only suffered minor scratches. She cried a lot and hugged me at the funeral, but her eyes then, I now realize, did not show the grief of a widow. The next morning, I visited Detective Ruiz. She was in the conference room, surrounded by old photos of the scene. "I want to ask about my son's accident," I said. "At the time, did you thoroughly inspect his car?" Ruiz looked at me for a moment, then nodded for me to sit. "What do you think, Mrs. Hill?" "I think it wasn't an accident." Ruiz exhaled softly, as if she had expected this. "I've been thinking along those lines, too. Last week, we sent Daniel's car to a private forensics lab. They found evidence of tampering with the braking system." I was stunned. "Do you mean someone intentionally killed him?" "It's very likely." The atmosphere in the room thickened. Ruiz opened a folder and pointed to several details. Minor cuts, the brake cable slit. She said, "Notably, according to records, the car was taken to a private garage 2 days before the crash. The person who signed for it was Monica Hill." I could not speak. All I could see in my mind was Monica smiling, her honeyed voice on the wedding day. "I promise I will take care of him for life." Ruiz continued in a low voice. "We are trying to locate the mechanic who worked on the car that day. His name is Carlos Medina. He quit his job after the accident and then disappeared. If we find him, we may learn exactly what happened." I looked out the window at sunlight falling on the flowers outside. The world seemed normal. Inside me, a storm was rising. If Monica really... I stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "We don't have the final proof yet," Ruiz interrupted, "but clearly she's hiding something." I left the office with heavy legs. Passing down the corridor, I saw Emily holding the baby in the care room. She smiled and said softly, "He's doing better, Mrs. Hill. He can breathe on his own now." I stood there and looked at that small face. a face that bore Daniel's likeness. One truth was clear. This baby was not only a miracle of survival, but also living evidence of a crime not yet revealed. From that moment, I knew I could not simply sit and wait for the police. I had to uncover the truth. For Daniel, and for the little grandson breathing weakly inside that incubator. 2 days later, Detective Ruiz called me. Her voice was low and firm. "We've located Carlos Medina. He's in a small town down south, about a 3-hour drive from here. He's agreed to talk, but only to you." I was startled. To me? Why? Maybe he thinks you'll believe him more than the police. Maybe he's scared. Either way, this might be our only chance to find out what really happened. I agreed. That afternoon, Ruiz drove. The road stretched long and silent, flanked by dry, barren fields. She said, "If he tells the truth, we can prove Daniel was murdered. But be careful, Mrs. Hill. Men like Carlos aren't simple." When we arrived, an old auto repair shop stood in a sparsely populated neighborhood. The sign was faded, and a few rusted cars were scattered across the yard. Carlos Medina sat outside smoking, looking worn and restless. A man in his 40s, unshaven, eyes darting away as we approached. I walked up to him. "You're Carlos? I'm Daniel Hill's mother." He looked at me, fear flickering in his eyes before he turned away. "I don't want any trouble, lady. It's all over now." I took a deep breath. "My son died in an accident." "But you and I both know it wasn't an accident. Monica hired you, didn't she?" Carlos was silent for a long time. Then he crushed his cigarette and said hoarsely, "She asked me to do something small, just loosen the brakes a bit. Not enough to kill anyone. I needed the money. She promised to pay more after it was done." I felt the blood drain from my body. Did she say why? She said Daniel was planning to divorce her, and she'd lose everything if that happened. Ruiz stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Do you have any proof? Messages? Transactions?" Carlos nodded faintly and pulled out an old phone from his pocket. The screen was cracked, and the edges were worn. I kept it, just in case. She wired me $2,000. The messages are still there. Ruiz took the phone and scanned it quickly. Her eyes lit up. "This is enough for an arrest warrant." Carlos bowed his head. "I never thought Daniel would die. I needed the money." I looked at him. There was no anger left, only emptiness. "You killed my son, even if not by your own hands. But if you truly regret it, then help that baby live in justice." Carlos nodded, eyes red. On the drive back, Ruiz said, "Monica won't escape. With this evidence, we can prosecute her." I looked out the window, the sunset stretching across the road. Relief mingled with dread in my chest. Because when justice draws near, the shadows begin to stir, and I could feel it. Monica would not wait quietly to be caught. News of Monica's impending arrest spread faster than I expected. Just 2 days later, Detective Ruiz called while I was at the hospital watching over the baby. "Monica's gone," she said bluntly. "She's left her house, her phone's off, no one knows where she is." I was silent for a few seconds, staring at the incubator where my tiny grandson slept peacefully. A creeping fear rose in me. A woman who could hire someone to kill her husband and throw her own child into a lake would not go down easily. Ruiz tried to reassure me. "Stay at the hospital, Mrs. Hill. We'll find her." But I couldn't shake the unease. That night, I returned home. My first time opening the door in over a month. Everything looked the same. Neat, quiet, untouched. Yet the air felt unnaturally cold. I turned on the light and sat down, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. At dawn, just as I was pouring tea, the landline rang. I picked up. "Mrs. Hill," a familiar voice, cold, steady, and enough to freeze my spine. "How have you been?" My throat tightened. "Monica, where are you?" "Farther than you think. I just wanted to remind you. You're holding something that belongs to me." I gripped the receiver. "You mean the baby? He's Daniel's son, my grandson. My son, she said slowly, and you have no right to keep him. Her tone was calm, but every word carried a hidden blade. You tried to kill your own child, Monica. You don't deserve to be his mother. A dry, chilling laugh echoed through the line. You're naive, Mrs. Hill. I only wanted to free him. Now I want back everything Daniel left behind, the money and the child. I trembled, but forced my voice steady. The police are looking for you. You'd better turn yourself in. You really think they'll believe you? She sneered. An old, lonely woman who lost her son, now claiming I killed my husband and threw my baby into a lake? Sounds more like madness than truth, doesn't it? The line went dead. I stood frozen, hands shaking so badly that the teacup slipped and shattered on the floor. The next morning, I told Ruiz everything. She frowned deeply. She's testing you, trying to see how you'll react. Don't worry. We'll assign officers to protect you around the clock and monitor all communications. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy as stone. When night fell, I looked out the window. Under the streetlight in the distance, a car had been parked for a long time before finally driving away. I didn't know who it was, but I could feel it. Monica was back, and this time, she wouldn't let go so easily. 2 days after that call, I lived in a state of limbo between waking and dreaming. Every sound outside the door made my heart pound. Ruiz had assigned 2 officers to guard the house, but I knew Monica wasn't someone who could be easily stopped. On the 3rd night, around 11, my cell phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. It's me, Monica. Her voice was low but clear. I could hear wind in the background, maybe from outside. What do you want now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I want to talk. Just the 2 of us. If you really care about the baby, meet me somewhere we can speak like adults. I was silent. Where? The old warehouse by the lake. The place where you found the suitcase. Come alone. Tomorrow night. Midnight. If I see the police, you'll never know what I came to say. She hung up. The next morning, I told Ruiz everything. She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. This is our last chance to catch her. We'll have a team surrounding the warehouse. All you need to do is keep her talking as long as possible. Can you do that? I nodded. Not because I was brave, but because I knew that if I didn't end this, Monica would keep coming after me. And the baby. That evening, they fitted a small device under my collar, a microphone the size of a coin with a panic button. And I was left to wonder what it was for. Ruiz gave me one last warning. If you feel in danger, press it 3 times in a row. My team will come in immediately. Near midnight, I drove alone to Silverwood Lake. The road was deserted, filled only with the sound of wind and crickets. When I stopped near the old warehouse, moonlight shimmered on the water, the same lake where I had once seen the floating suitcase. The warehouse door was slightly open. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air smelled of rust and dust, thick enough to choke. Monica? She emerged from the shadows. Thinner now, hair cut short, her eyes sharp and cold. You actually came. I didn't think you'd dare. I'm not afraid of you, I said quietly. I just want to know why you did it. Why you killed Daniel. She laughed, a rough, bitter sound. Because he was a fool. He thought love was enough. But I needed more. Money, freedom, a life neither you nor your precious son could ever understand. My hands clenched. And the baby? Daniel's own blood. How could you try to kill him, too? He was a mistake. But now, I want what's mine, the money and my child. From her pocket, she pulled out something small and black. I recognized it instantly, a gun. Her hand trembled, but her eyes were ice. I pressed the button 3 times beneath my collar and met her gaze. You'll never have him, Monica. A gunshot exploded through the air. I fell backwards, pain searing through my shoulder. Then blinding headlights flared through the doorway, and I heard shouting, "Police, drop the weapon!" Everything blurred. Footsteps, screams, then silence. And finally, a familiar voice near my ear. "Mrs. Hill, stay with us. The ambulance is on its way." I woke up in the bright white room of St. Mary's Hospital. The sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. Sunlight from the window made me squint. My shoulder throbbed, but my mind was clearing. "Mrs. Hill?" a gentle voice said. It was Emily. She smiled softly, placing a hand on my arm. "You're safe now. The bullet only grazed you. Didn't hit the bone. You're very lucky." I turned my head and saw Detective Ruiz standing near the door, her face tired, but her eyes relieved. "Monica's in custody," she said. "When we stormed in, she tried to run. She's now being charged with murder, attempted murder, and assault with intent to kill." I sat still, unsure whether to feel joy or sorrow. Part of me was satisfied that justice had finally arrived, but another part felt hollow. I never imagined Daniel's life, kind, gentle Daniel, would end because of someone's greed and cruelty. Ruiz continued, "The court has granted you temporary custody of the baby. He's getting stronger every day. You can see him now." I nodded weakly. When Emily brought him in, my heart melted. The little boy was plump, his dark eyes wide with wonder. I reached out and his tiny fingers wrapped tightly around mine. Warmth flooded through me. "My son is gone," I whispered, "but a part of him is still alive here." Emily smiled. "And because of you, that part gets to live on." In the days that followed, peace gradually returned. The police closed the investigation. Ruiz visited often, not just as an officer, but as a friend. She said she'd never met anyone braver than me, a 62-year-old woman who faced down both fear and the past. I laughed softly and told her I wasn't brave. I just didn't want my grandson to grow up never knowing how much his father loved and sacrificed for him. 3 months later, the court granted me full custody of the baby. I named him Ethan, the name Daniel once said he'd give his son if he ever had one. The house was no longer silent. It was alive with cries, laughter, and the sound of tiny feet. Every morning I carried Ethan out to the porch and looked at Silverwood Lake glittering under the sun. The place that once held so much pain now shone as a testament to life. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know each one will be worth living. Because after losing nearly everything, I've been given a reason to start again. One day, Emily asked, "Do you ever regret it? Risking your life like that?" I smiled, watching Ethan sleeping peacefully in my arms. "No. If I could do it all over again, I'd still dive into that lake. Family, even if only one person remains, is worth holding on to, no matter the cost. And if you're listening now, remember this. Life may drag you through pain so deep you think you'll never rise again. But as long as there is love, as long as compassion survives, there is still hope. If you believe that too, subscribe and stay with me to hear true stories where love always finds its way home.